This is First Edition, a GE video magazine.
Hello, I'm Bill Stewart. Welcome to First Edition. If you were to choose one word to describe GE in the 80s, it might be transformation. GE began the decade with some 350 assorted and dissimilar concerns, and ended it with 13 finely honed and keenly competitive key businesses, all of them now number one or number two in the global markets they serve. Along the way, now common words in the GE vocabulary, words like acquisition, globalization, delayering, transformed the business mix from mostly slow growth manufacturing to two-thirds high growth technology and service businesses. The resulting financial performance is impressive by any measure, and you can read about it in the annual report. After you do, you may be left with the impression that there's little left to say. But on the contrary, GE's financial performance is only one side of GE's success in the 80s. As Helen Gray reports, an even greater challenge awaits.
In the 80s, the word competition went from being a hollow buzzword to an all-out brawl, and naysayers of change paused to reconsider. The decade was capped with the fall of the Iron Curtain. In a decade that reshaped the marketplace, GE emerged ahead of the game, a tribute to the people who saw change as the glass half full. And while it's not a company given to dwelling on days gone by, GE Chairman Jack Welch says it's a performance every GE person can be proud of.
We're tickled pink with what we did. We think it worked. We think we're stronger than we've ever been. Our balance sheet is strong. We've got our highest R&D and our highest capital equipment expenditures in our history in 1990. At the same time, we're buying back our stock. And we're not having restructurings and all the discussions that you hear about every day in the paper.
Is restructuring over?
No. Change is not over. We'll never stop changing. But I think some of the massive structural change that we had in the 80s will, as I say, give way to much more software change in the 90s.
And what Welch calls the software change is GE's biggest challenge in the next decade. Typically, it starts like this, in sessions that 10 years ago you might have found in a Silicon Valley startup, but you wouldn't have found them at a GE business. Now you'll find them in every business.
They are really going in the right direction.
It's a concept called workout, a way of bringing together GE people from every walk of their business life to hash out what they do and why, and more importantly, how they can do it better.
It's a process, it's what I call a town meeting, where people come together, air what they think about the business, air how they could make it better, how their better way can help the business win, and see themselves create change. Feel what they say counts, feel themselves being listened to, feel them shape their job.
And in shaping their jobs, Welch says GE people will fashion boundary-less businesses where conventional organization and functional turf will disappear.
In the end, we won't have engineering, manufacturing, and marketing. We'll have projects. We'll have people with the team leaders. We'll have people pulling everybody together to get a job done. And people will be measured by the way they do their job, not by what they're called.
Why are you so sure that workout will work?
I believe that those closest to the work know what to do better than those further away from it. Secondly, they, in doing that, will get greater satisfaction, as anybody does who's listened to, for what they're doing, and they will begin to shape their work life. As they shape their work life, they'll feel better about themselves, and that will shape their total life. I know that's going to happen. It happens in small ventures. It's bureaucracy that causes problems.
You hate bureaucracy.
I hate it. Because what does a bureaucracy do? It forces people to look inward. People don't look at the customer in a bureaucracy. They come in and they worry about what? They worry about their boss, pleasing him or her, getting along, getting through, and getting out safe. It has all the wrong characteristics. It looks in, it doesn't look out. It rewards those who curry favor within it. It has all kinds of bad connotations. I do hate bureaucracy.
And bureaucracy's dismantling in the past decade has enabled GE's key businesses to move faster and GE people to respond more self-confidently, and the results show it. In 1980, only 2 of the key businesses were truly global. Today, most of them are. Operating profits outside the U.S. have grown 30% per year since 1987. They represent 40% of the 89 company total. GE's 89 exports contributed $4.8 billion on the plus side to the U.S. trade balance, more than double what it was just 2 years earlier. GE began the 80s with a total market value of $12 billion and an 11th place ranking among U.S. companies. It began 1990 at number 2 with a market value of $58 billion, the largest increase of any U.S. company during the decade. Annual revenues doubled, growing from $27 billion in 1980 to nearly $55 billion in 1989. Earnings per share grew every quarter for 40 consecutive quarters, delivering an average annual growth rate of 10.9%. Total cost productivity more than tripled. The results were fueled in part by $17 billion in acquisitions, including RCA, Employers Reinsurance, CGR, Borg-Warner Chemicals, Roper Corporation, and Montgomery Ward Credit, and joint ventures with Snecma of France, Fanuc of Japan, Bosch of West Germany, and GEC of the United Kingdom. The most recent strategic moves, an alliance with Ericsson of Sweden and the history-making acquisition of a majority interest in Tungsgrim of Hungary, are expected to expand the company's global reach in the 90s.
Is it realistic to expect that same kind of performance over the next 10 years?
It's realistic to compare our performance relative to the global economy that we played in, if in fact we have a global economy about like that, so we don't have a massive 5-year depression and some other things. Absolutely. I think this company is better positioned today than we were 10 years ago to capitalize on that.
In a world of emerging opportunity, however, Welch says the environment looms as a critical challenge.
Going forward, and as of this moment right now, GE has to be and must be in compliance in every single activity we are doing with the current regs. Going forward, we've got to get ahead of that. We've got to be sure we anticipate. Every single person in GE has to become an environmentalist. They have to be, our products have to be thought of in terms of, do they fit? Every product manager has to think in terms of the environment. Every process manager has to think of waste emissions. Everybody has a role to play in this. And the companies that don't understand this and don't do it won't recruit the best, won't sell their products, won't be the viable, positive enterprises that they have to be.
GE's future was a popular topic among 13 GE people, one from each key business, brought together to fashion a candid, unrehearsed employee annual report with the chairman.
In terms of acquisitions and alliances, we've entered into many over the past decade. What lessons have we learned about trying to bring together 2 different parties with different corporate cultures?
I think the biggest thing that we've learned in an acquisition, and we've learned it over time, and we still haven't found the right answer to it yet, is that most of our people have never been acquired. And they don't know what it's like to be acquired. They don't know that your family roots have all been torn apart, your children's education's in doubt. It's nothing like anything happens here. I mean, everything is gone. Your relationships with your boss are now over that you've built for 15 years. Your pension plan, the first doubt is it real? Enormous trauma goes through these companies, whether it's Borg-Warner Chemical or RCA or many companies. So and GE people come in right away, a lot of times, with their heels dug in and tell you, here's how we do it. And most of it in the middle management layer. People like people in this room would go in, we've just acquired somebody, and let's go tell them how we do it. Not having any appreciation for the enormous personal and emotional trauma the people who've just been sold, I mean, it's being sold, feel. And all of a sudden it happens to them. So we got to get better at that. Now, we also know that when we have a big acquisition from a powerful business, despite ourselves, our strength gets over the initial hurdle and we go on to great success. In mergers, we learn something else. It doesn't work too well when the 2 parties have equal skills and equal egos. There's always a battle down the line. Works very well when you put together complementary skills. For example, we have two recent mergers. The Fanuc GE and factory automation is a perfect example. Fanuc is a dominant technology company. They're terrific. We couldn't get out of our way in factory automation in the 80s as we tried to get high technology products out. But we had marketing, and we own the markets. That marriage has been wonderful. Fanuc has brought great products. We brought market expansion, et cetera. That's wonderful. But the Ericsson Mobile joint venture. We've got marketing, we've got low-cost production skills. Ericsson's got an enormous technological base. That marriage should provide a global strength in that business, where each party comes in knowing what they have and don't have.
I have a follow-up on that. As part of the joint venture process, there is an exchange in technology that occurs between the companies. And if there did exist a gap prior to the partnership, that gap will inherently be narrowed as part of the partnership. My question is, what plans should we put in place in the decade of the 90s to maintain our technical superiority as a company?
The technology exchange issue is one that's often brought up in aircraft engine. It's often brought up by the engineers when I'm at Crotonville. And the argument goes something like this. Here we are with our great technology, our leading edge stuff, and we sign up with a company like SNECMA or somebody else, and before you know it, we're exchanging our great technology with them, and we're going to be close to parity. And the implication in the question is, why do we do it? Why do you do those things?
We're giving it away.
Giving it away. That's the implication. Okay, let's talk now about aircraft engines' market success throughout Europe, with SNECMA as their partner and the French government as their partner. All the Air France planes, all the Lufthansa planes, all of the KLM business. Billions of dollars worth of business. What business in GE with engineers has been expanding dramatically in the 80s? Aircraft engine. Where have those engineering jobs come from? Markets, customers. They don't come because GE had technology. They come because customers buy GE engines. And customers buy, and governments buy GE engines. And foreign governments own foreign airlines. And those governments want jobs in their country. And as a result of that, we have expanded globally the aircraft engine business. If we were a domestic player, we wouldn't be playing in some of those markets.
What's your assessment of how we're doing in Asia versus your expectations today?
Well, it depends. If you look at aircraft engines, plastics, and medical, we're doing very well. If you look at some of our more mature businesses, it's more difficult. We don't bring much to the party. Lighting is having some small ventures in Korea, trying to work something out. They have a small joint project venture with Toshiba. The facts are, in Asia, many of our core businesses meet some of their strongest competitors, and we don't bring a lot to the party. So while our high technology businesses are doing well there, some of our core businesses are struggling. Our trade balance with Japan is positive, however, and we're growing significantly in Korea.
Jack, we'd like to hear about your thoughts on the globalization of workout. It's meant a lot to us domestically, improving our competitive base, and as we expand internationally in Europe and in the Far East, how do you see it being applied?
Well, I think the same way. I mean, workout is nothing more than dealing with human nature and behavior. And behavioral changes, while there are differences by culture, they have to be dealt with. And what workout is aimed at doing is getting people to feel a better sense of responsibility for what they're doing, feeling control over their lives, trying to form what they're doing, speaking up. And that's good in any language in any country.
Jack, what about the union and workout? As we drive workout down to the rank and file, if we don't have union backing, it could be serious trouble. What's been done, if anything, at the national level with the union to get on board with us?
Well, I have had a discussion on 2 occasions with Bill Bywater of the IUE, and in principle, he has no objection to it, in principle. Now, as it affects job classifications, we have to be careful. And so we have to respect the dignity of their union and what they want. But in principle, he's all for speaking out, letting them do it. Look, workout is human nature again. And union, non-union shouldn't be it.
I'm kind of curious what your plans are, what your thoughts are in getting your workout message down to the factory floor in transportation's case.
Workout in a business like transportation ought to be, by the end of next year, by the end of '90, in every employee in the business. It's a small business. In silicones, it's practically there now. About half the business, half the 1,000 people have been in detailed workout sessions with the general manager. I went to a meeting in Waterford for a workout session for 4 hours after 3 days. It was half hourly and half engineers, process engineers. And they were working on quality of the process. And they had presentations. The only people in ties in the room were myself, period. Everybody else had been in a workout session, had been there. I was a guest, I didn't know enough. I showed up there and the people had view graphs, handwritten view graphs they're putting up. None of us in this room could pick out who the hourly person was and who the level 14 process engineer was. None of us would have. They knew as much or more than anybody about how it worked, what had to be changed, how it had to work. This is not a management, for management only program, for levels X, Y, Z only. This is every human being that works in this institution.
An unfortunate result of the timing for aerospace is that workout initiatives are being introduced, almost literally right now, at the same time that we're facing the kind of business and market trauma that other businesses have already survived and come through. And people are looking to a lot of damage. They're probably anticipating worse than they'll actually see.
The defense business of the 90s is going to be the industrial America of the early 80s. All the fat that built up, those people that became geniuses when Ronald Reagan drew the defense budget from X billion to 300 billion, and who looked over at people in power systems and other places, says, what's wrong over there? Can't they run their business? Will now face a whole different world. Let's go back to the question you started with, though, I think, on workout and trauma. We had a long discussion of that at the CEC. And the question we debated was, is workout something that is right or wrong for aerospace at a time when the trauma and the dislocations are coming, or will workout get, quote, a bad name for having workout? They said, they argued strongly that workout has to be, they wish they had workout when they were going through trauma. So more and more people could ask questions, talk, and not have the corridor gossip, the fear, locked in their offices, huddled down. Now they're going to be out there open talking about it, talking about their future, what can they do, how can they change it, is it inevitable, face-to-face confrontations, and we won't break as much glass. We won't mess up customer service as much, we won't do something else. We'll have a chance to do it better. So the decision we made that workout in a downsizing may even be more valuable, because all we're doing with workout is asking people what they think, how they want to do things, what they ought to do. So in the end, they ought to have more voice in how we shape the downsizing.
Jack, what has workout meant to you personally? What do you do different now than you did from, say, 2 or 3 years ago?
Well, I guess I would say my job has totally changed. I'm into the strategic decisions, I'm into the key personnel decisions, I'm into the resource allocation trade-offs, I'm into programs like workout, trying to get company-wide initiatives, but I don't have reviews of products. I don't have reviews of, in appliances, the chairman used to go down and look at the color of the appliances. I mean, they used to have an annual product review. I couldn't bring anything to that. I don't approve any appropriation requests, none. I delegated all of that down because, I mean, I was getting, when I first got in this job, I was getting a myriad of appropriation requests, from complicated engines to computers, and I don't know how to build an engine and I don't know how to run a computer. So I added no value. So I don't do a lot of that sort of stuff. So from my standpoint, my job's become a lot more interesting, a lot easier, and the people that work with me know what their responsibilities are and what their job is, and hopefully I know what my job is, and we both try and do them.
As we push for speed, simplicity, and self-confidence in each business, do you see organizational structure playing a role, like business groups and teams and those kinds of things, Jack, to facilitate the whole process?
Look, I think the objective here, if we get right down to what we want to end up with, is this, what I call, and you've heard me say it, this boundaryless organization, where we break down the walls between functions that you just mentioned, Joe, where there's a blur between us and our customer, where we're all integrated in systems and design and delivery systems, so we know what we're giving them. In vendors, where vendors are partners with us in our decisions. And I think we're going to go to much more project-oriented work. I mean, in the late 90s, people will be just grabbing a project, multifunctional skills, multidisciplines will come together naturally. Now we're doing it, it's an event. We're starting it in seeds everywhere. But how silly to have all these walls that we set up ourselves. What we need are skills to go at a project, drive it home, and do it. And hopefully we'll get the reward systems in place, that people will find that that's the way to be rewarded, have a better job, and win in the marketplace.
Jack, as we move toward the boundaryless corporation and really close in the relationship between suppliers, ourselves, and our customers, what challenges do you see in reconciling the fact that each of these groups has a different constituency that they have to respond to?
It does a supplier of Louisville steel, if you will, in your business, or some other component parts to the appliance business. It does them little or no good if you fall on your face in execution. If they price you out of the market, it does them no good. In the end, we've got a customer here. It's in all of our interests, every constituency's interest, employees, vendors, to satisfy and serve and expand that customer base. So, and maybe you can help me with a little more expansion, but I can't see how, if we've got our heads on right, and we're really talking about partnerships with the right vendors, that's ever going to be an issue. If you've got some short-time focus where you've got our purchasing people out trying to get a 90-day hit on a price cut and cutting off a vendor and changing them and not really being partners, I can see that happening. Hopefully, if you create the boundaryless society, what's good for them is good for us, is good for the consumer and the market expansion. I think we all have to become comfortable with being customers in the morning, competitors in the afternoon, and suppliers in the evening. And that's the way the world's working.
You've been very frank about the necessity for companies to maintain their profitability, saying that if they did not, you'd be very willing and even likely to sell those or put them on the block. My question to you is, conversely, if a company exceeds its profitability expectations, is there some type of incentive or bonus compensation plan that's in place to reward the employees that contributed to that success?
Depends on the businesses. Motors tried something this year at the end of the last half of the year on a profit-sharing plan. Lighting has a variety of profit-sharing plans. Lots of places have them, all around the company. These aren't giveaway programs. People have to meet their commitments. There's a variety of other things, but we are trying to find the right answer. All of these programs have one-year sunset provisions, because some people put in piecework once and thought it was a great motivating tool at one point in time. It turned out to be lousy. No one knows quite how to do these things. When we put in management awards, some businesses made them too broadly applicable. So people said, well, everybody gets a management award. They're not special. It's like the dental plan. We spend $4 billion on benefits and get no credit because everybody gets benefits. So if you don't differentiate plans, you have real problems. If we gave stock options to everyone, it'd be like the dental plan. So it's a very interesting thing. We don't know yet how to do it just right. I like the plan I just saw in ED&C this week. It looked like a very exciting plan. Lots of people are playing in it. Nothing if you don't make the plan. Above the plan, as you point out, some opportunity.
Okay.
Jack, I have a related question on that. You mentioned the trauma and power business downsizing. One of the consequences of this downsizing was that there were fewer section level 15 jobs and above. And it has certainly been brought to my attention by some of my people that there seems to be fewer opportunities for promotion into the middle management level and above. I'd like to first open it up to hear from the other businesses to see if that's an issue in their business, and then to hear you respond to that.
Who wants to start?
I think it's an issue for a very small percentage of the population of GE employees. I think most GE employees are trying to get from level 9 to level 12 in the course of their career, and I don't think that's changing. That's getting better and better if we succeed in this whole workout concept, because every job is going to become more fulfilling. I never really think about it in terms of myself. I figure if I'm good, I'm good.
We're going off the level system, so the level structure in itself is not really relevant. But I think what is an issue is that first layer of management. Typically you have 20 direct reports. You don't become a manager with 20 direct reports overnight. So while you've got people at the individual contributor layer that have a lot of responsibility, that have exciting work to do, that can make the decisions because everything is delegated, at the same time, if they want to become managers, it's very difficult to make that transition. And that's been a balancing act, how to get these people the experience they need in order to move into that first layer.
I think also that one of the questions with that is an assessment of whether or not you're winning in the process, as you said earlier. And I think that's going to require a job of us as managers to reinforce that, whether it be through stock options, management awards, the big hits in terms of the salary or what have you, so that individual feels that they are winning. It also, I think, is a good move as we get away from all of the traditional structures, if you will. It will add to the flexibility of moving between businesses, up in your own business, and you don't have these boundaries that you talk about that put everybody in a box and makes it very difficult when you're looking at an opportunity to move on.
You don't need to be a manager to be a team leader. And you can motivate people, and you can prove your management skills, and you can be a technical leader in your community. And you can be chosen as a team leader. And you don't have to be at a level of a subsection manager. You can be an engineer or a staff engineer.
And when you don't say the word subsection manager someday, we'll be even a further step ahead. You're right on. You're right on the issue. I mean, this is a wonderful conversation.
I think that what's for the value to us, there are a couple. One is the process orientation. And what that does is that gives you ownership. And you feel that ownership, and that's consistent with the whole workout effort. But on a personal level, that allows you to gain a general manager's perspective at really a lower level, arguably, in the organization. And I think that is a skill that's going to drive our competitiveness.
I think, though, one of the issues, getting back to the question, though, you joined GE, I think, in '72 in power generation. You've been there more or less. That's one of our most mature businesses, one of our most bureaucratic businesses. It is sort of at the center of GE. So there's trauma in a business like that because people waited. I mean, in turbines in the 70s and 60s, you waited till you got to a certain job and you got the newspaper delivered to you and the coffee delivered to you, and the customers came and ordered a turbine and begged for one. But that's when Eastern Europe was Eastern Europe, and the world was isolated, and the pace of change was slow, and the world had come about. But he has a real problem in lighting, and some of our more mature Louisville, where the parking space, when you were 22, you looked over and you said, when you're 47, I like to park over there, because they had works manager or something else on the title, Well, that crap is all going to get blown away by the end of this decade, and people are going to get the conversation we just had now is a wonderful conversation and refreshing, but that's where it has to go. It's going to be frustrating for those who signed up for a different game. The pace of change is exploding. I mean, anybody who says, how do I get my people to adapt to change? If they can't adapt to change, they shouldn't be in business. Change is, I'm not sure they should be on Earth. Because their kids are going to change. Their family life is going to change. The world as they saw it 3 years ago is different than it is today. If you're not flexible, if you can't just adapt to if our company were the same as it was 5 years ago, shame on our company. So I think a lot of our messages The ability, I think one of the distinguishing characteristics of a leader in the 90s will be energy. Energy will differentiate people. And the ability to energize others will be a key characteristic. Because with this pace of change and this constant travel and this globalization, it requires enormous energy. And it also requires your ability to create an energy field for others, to excite others to go out and reach and grab and do things and act and not wait. So thanks a lot for doing this wonderful job of coming in here and chatting. I was really excited about the responses that you all had to the question about levels and job responsibilities, because if that's real and we can move that across this company, that's what we got to do. Reward people for what they do, not for what they're called, not for their title, for the job and the activity that they do and the success they do with it. We got an exciting company. We think we got the best company in the world, and with people like you, I'm sure that we can make the 80s look like a sick decade compared to what we can do in the 90s. Thanks a lot for coming in. Thank you. It was terrific. I enjoyed it. Thanks.
That's it for this First Edition. Thanks for joining us. If you'd like to comment on First Edition, we'd like to hear from you. We pick up our mail at First Edition, GE, 3135 Easton Turnpike, E2B, Fairfield, Connecticut, 06431. Thanks for joining us.